What's up, guys? Cass here from GiveWave Studios, and on this one I'm going to show you guys how to turn all these pieces of foam that you see here into this kawaii AF EVA foam mushroom hat, complete with LED toadstools, inspired by famed Hyrulean designer Cece and worn by all Misko treasure hunting fashion lovers. Let's get it. All right, so our first step is going to obviously cut out all of your parts. So if you downloaded the pattern, make sure you transfer all of your information, your tick marks, the piece names, etc., etc. And then what we're going to do is glue all of the pieces together. So A to B, B to C, D to etc., etc., until we get H all the way to A. And then follow your tick marks. Make sure that you make the foam work for you. And then I'll catch you guys on the next step. And once you have everything assembled in quarters, now we're gonna go ahead and assemble everything in halves, and after that, as a whole. As you guys can see, this is definitely easier as a two-person job. This is Brooke, and Brooke is helping me out on the other side here, and it took so long to apply this first half that by the time we got to here, this was already dried up a little bit. So just gonna reapply and continue the process of aligning everything up. All right, so here is our finished hat. As you can see, it already has a nice mushroom shape to it. The next big step really is to take a giant piece of paper, like so, and you're going to put your hat down onto it, and you're going to trace out where everything falls, so you have just one giant continuous bottom of a shape. And then where the seam lines meet up with the paper, as you can see here, we're going to put those on the outside, and we're going to mark which section is which. That way, when we reassemble this to the bottom, we know exactly where they need to line up. So make sure you bring in those lines into your pattern so that when you cut it out, you can still see it on the inside of your paper, okay? And then you're also going to add in your letters, G, H, A, etc., so that once you cut it out, you know exactly how it needs to be reassembled. So technically this isn't something that you guys are getting in your pattern. This is something that you guys are gonna have to do on your own, because once you guys assemble the hat, everyone's shape is going to be slightly different depending on how well you executed the assembly of your pieces, and also depending on how you want to structure the hat also. So if you wanted it to be a little bit more tapered, you can push the parts into each other and get a more like narrow brim, and end up with a much different base shape. And you guys don't have a top-down view, but you get the idea. All right, so you trace your pattern once you've cut it out onto a large piece of EVA foam. In our case, unfortunately, we didn't quite fit the 24 by 24 square inch piece that we have, but the pattern that you will receive will make it so that no matter what size you get, this excess little piece will fit within a 24 by 24 piece, especially the puzzle types. So the pattern will be scaled down from what you see here by like 10 to 15%. So what we're gonna have to do on our end here, don't mind the gray lines, okay? You want to make sure that you flip this so that if you are using a textured foam, that the soft side of the foam is the part that is facing the outside of your hat, okay? And then the textured side is the part that faces the inside. So in our case, we're going to cut this out. We're going to cut right up along the edges of the puzzle pieces here, and then we're going to just glue the excess back onto it. Okay, and hopefully that shouldn't be too much of an issue when it comes to reassembling our pieces. So we're gonna fast forward through these steps and catch you guys for the next one. All right, and here is our cutoff base with the little excess that I talked about, because our pattern So I'm just gonna glue this in place and then talk to you guys about the next step. All right, so here's our whole piece. Okay, at this point, what you want to do is more or less visually get a sense of where your center is. Try to think to yourself, all right, if I were to wear this right now, where would my head be? Okay. And in my case, I would be somewhere around here. With this being the front of my hat and this being the back of my hat. You don't have to do exactly what I do. CD could be your front, BA could be your front, whichever you feel looks best for you, okay? And once you have that, just more or less give yourself the center of that circle. None of this has to be exact, okay? And then you're going to grab a ruler and remember the tick marks of your pattern that we had put on the side, on the inside of this piece. We're just gonna have them all converge to this center point. Okay, and this is what's going to become like the billows underneath the mushroom. I think that's the right word. That show on the underside of the hat. Okay, so all of these are going to become these little subdivisions that you see underneath here. So if you feel like you want more of them, by all means, feel free to split these in 2s, 3s, 4s, however many you feel like would make your piece appealing to you. Okay, so with your pizza pie all sliced up, depending on if you split the parts in smaller pieces or larger pieces, since I split each one of my slices in 2, so for example, here I have my F, right? So I'll do F1 and F2. Okay, here I have my G, G1, G2, so on and so forth. Right? And once you have all of that, we're gonna slice everything up, and then I'll catch you guys for the next step. All right, and so you're going to go from your one piece to all of your little pizza slices all together. And for the next step, what we'll be doing is grabbing each individual one of these, and we're going to bevel the edges here. So it's gonna go from looking like this to something like this, okay? If we compare to a slice next to it, you guys can see that it is nice and soft edge as opposed to the very angular edge that this has, okay? And we're gonna do that for every single one of your pieces. You don't wanna go over too deep. You just wanna focus on beveling the surface here, because what's gonna happen is we're still going to attach these edge to edge, okay? But once both sides are sanded, it's gonna give us that little bellow look that we want for underneath the mushroom. And we're gonna slightly curve all of them to get the results that we need. So I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward through these steps and catch you guys for the next one. All right, so now we have all of our pieces nice and beveled. And if I grab 2 slices here, you'll see that once we put them together, they'll have a nice little curve that kind of goes one inside of the other, which will do a really nice little underside of the bellows of the mushroom. As you can see, just sanded down the edge to like a straight, right? And then here I sanded both the top and the back nice and rounded, while also sanding a little bit further into the textured side of the foam so we can glue the top portion of the hat onto it. And if you're using smooth on both sides foam, obviously you don't need to do this step, but for us it was necessary because we needed somewhere to actually attach the top. All right, so now we're going to heat form all of these a little bit, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. All right, and once we have our part nice and heated, we're just gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of a curve to this. You wanna over exaggerate your curve as you're putting it in there, because the foam will tend to wanna come back to its original flat structure. But this isn't something too major. Right, you see the flat piece and you see the rounded piece next to it. So it's very subtle, right? Doesn't have to be a lot, but it's gonna help sell the illusion of the bellows being a little bit more dimensional on the underside once we start putting everything together. So we're gonna go ahead and do that for all of our pieces, and then I'll catch you guys for the next step. And now that we have all of our pieces nice and rounded and curved, we're going to go ahead and glue all of them back together. Okay, so as you put glue on your pieces, you want to grab your parts with glue. Make sure that your back corners or your outer edges are aligned. Okay, so there, and then just kind of press them towards each other, going towards the center. It doesn't matter what the center looks like, it really matters what this outer edge looks like for you, because again, we're gonna cut out the center and we're not keeping a good chunk of it. So as long as it looks good here on your little seam lines, you can start seeing the little bellows that we were talking about. And then keep doing that until you have the whole thing assembled. Okay, so we made it to the point where we have our two halves. So just like we've done before, just kind of start at one end, work your way to the other. Okay, and then make sure that you push and pull where you need to. Just gonna shift this over real quick so you guys can see it. Okay, so I'm pushing down just like we were doing for everything else. Okay, making sure that everything just kind of ends up dead center. I'm not incredibly worried about this inside piece lining up perfectly. And then you will notice that while you're doing this on the other edge here, this is gonna billow up a little bit, which is perfectly fine. Once we cut the hole out for our head, that's gonna relieve that stress and it'll go back to how it was before. So I have this bendable ruler, so I wrapped it around Brooke's head to kind of get the size of her noggin that we're going to use as a base for this. And I'm going to trace the inside of this, okay, because that's what was touching the head. Okay. And again, as we're thinking of cutting this, I'm going to make this slightly smaller, again by like 1/4 of an inch than what I think it needs to be. You'll notice that this is not a perfect circle, right? No head is. All heads are mostly oval. So make sure that you put that general shape onto your foam before you cut it out. Because if you put a perfect circle, it might not fit properly. Okay, we're gonna get a nice sharp blade and cut this out. All right, so first pass was a little too small, which is great. Now we can take out the extra 1/4 inch that we had in here. And the hat should more or less sit on your forehead, but also like right on top of it, the ears. So it goes down on your head considerably a little bit. It doesn't just balance on top of it. All right, so that ended up working out. So our hat fits, so we're gonna keep this measurement. We're basically done with this piece at this point. We're gonna switch focus over to our top piece now. Not anything too major. We're just gonna go in and sand down all of our seams to try and get this as smooth as possible. How we smoothed out the edges and just tapered them down. We're going to do the same thing for the edge of the top of the mushroom. So this is going to taper down that way, all the way to the flat edge, okay? And once that's done, then we get to glue the two parts together. So we're going to go ahead and fast forward through those steps and catch you guys for the next ones. Okay, so I have a Dremel with a stone bit attached to it. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is basically just clean up my seams here. All right, making sure that both sides feel smooth to the touch as they transition from one edge to the other. So we're just doing that for all of our panels, and then we're also going to taper this edge down here. I'll show you guys how we do that. Okay, and basically, if you guys can tell, we're gonna go from this nice tapered edge, you can see, okay, as opposed to if I put these two guys side to side, you can see it's like a nice transition from this bottom edge to the surface here, as opposed to like this rough, just sharp, straight edge. We're gonna do that all the way around the mushroom, clean all of the seams. Catch you guys for the next step. All right, so we're out of the chop shop. As you can see, all of the edge all the way around has been tapered down to its bottom edge. And you'll also notice that I have some tape on here. This was for us to kind of test how everything lined up and the fit of everything, and to kind of test the hat out itself and see if the hole was good enough and if it was tight enough, etc., etc. So now what we're basically going to do is actually glue this to the top part, glue the bottom to the top. And as we mentioned earlier, we had already separated things in different categories, so we're just gonna match D with D as we glue it all the way around. So we're gonna fast forward through the steps and catch you guys for the next one. I'll do a little bit of this with you guys. So what I've been doing is, so you can see here I have a seam glued down. I'll just jump over to the other seam, okay, like so. And then just kind of push and pull the foam so that it sits right on the edge. Okay, so basically tucking the white inside of the gray a little bit. Just continuing that process all the way around, like that. Okay, and then I'll move on to the next two seams. So here I'm doing the A section, so glue that edge and then just kind of focus on making these inner ones more or less even, nice and flush with each other as we kind of go around. Okay, all right, and then same thing for these last two right here, middle, okay, and then tuck, pull, push, however it is that you want it to line up. Okay, and then last but not least, we're at G. Push, pull, tuck. Again, up to you how you want it to be. We have ours so that the white kind of sits on top of the gray with a little bit of a lip, but you can make them, you know, just flush. Okay, and now we have our hat fully assembled. Okay, you'll notice here that we have some red circles. In the reference that we have, there are these little mushrooms that kind of poke out of the hat. So we're going to be putting some holes in here so we can run some LEDs to it, because we're going to make those little mushrooms light up. And these little things are the things that we're referring to here. So we're gonna fast forward through that process and catch you guys for the next step. All right, so we have our three pieces. Now we're gonna grab our heat gun and we're going to heat the circle that we cut at an angle only, okay? All right, once we have it heated on both sides, we're gonna start using our fingers to kind of push in and start creating this dome shape, all right? So now we're starting to basically sculpt out what's going to be the cap of the mushroom. Right? So make sure you put a good amount of curve. When you get to the edge here, just kind of roll it to give it a nice end point. Okay, so we have our cap, we have our bottom, and basically at this point, we're just going to glue these two to each other. If you're not putting LED lights in, there's no need for you to kind of put a hole in the middle, but we are putting LED lights in. So we are going to make just like a 1/4 inch hole down the middle of this. And then we're going to grab our stem piece and we're just gonna roll it onto itself as tightly as possible for it to kind of hopefully maintain that shape. And we're gonna do that to both sides. And if you're finding that it's a little hard to maintain its shape, you can always add some heat to it. And then do the same thing, but with the heat, which should help it maintain the shape a little bit better. And we're just going to glue these edges to each other. And we're going to glue this on top of that, edge to edge. We're going to fast forward through those steps and catch you guys for the next one. All right, so I'm gonna take my time with the stem with you guys real quick. Again, you're getting the two overlapping angles, right, to connect with each other, and you're trying to do this as seamlessly as possible. Okay, so it's almost like it fades, one piece fades into another. It's kind of like the result that you're trying to get here. Okay, and don't worry if you end up with like one end slightly longer than the other. You can just grab a pair of scissors and snip that right off to connect it. All right, so that's how we do that. It's out of the way. And then for these two guys, simple enough, edge to edge, just like everything else we've been doing. Try to make sure that it's as aligned as possible. Okay, just focusing on one end at a time. Like that. And just like that, we have a little mushroom cap. And if for whatever reason you're still not kind of like quite happy with the shape, you can go ahead and heat this back up a little bit at the top and even at the bottom. And if you were to take something like the back of a Sharpie, you can insert that into the hole and you can just kind of push and shape. Basically, you're doing what we were doing with your fingers, but like from the inside with the Sharpie. So we can increase the height of the top right here. We can make the bottom just kind of protrude out a little bit. All right, and now we have something that looks more like a flying saucer, but you get the idea. If I didn't like this, I could just push this in more, reheat it, you know, whatever the case may be. All right, and then we're just going to glue the stems to each other, and we'll catch you guys for the next step. Now, one thing that you guys will notice between this one that we just made and this one from previous, you'll notice that this kind of, we've smoothed this edge here, so it falls down nice and smooth. So that is also something that you can do with your Dremel and some sandpaper. You can kind of completely make the transition from the top edge to the bottom piece, right? But that's just a little extra detail if you guys want to take it a step further. All right, so basically we're done with assembly at this point. These will be the last things that we put onto the hat. We're probably going to do all of the painting and everything first. So now let's head over to the paint booth and let's get prepped for painting. All right, and now that your mushroom is nice and plasti dipped on both sides, we're gonna do a little bit of damage control. Some of our, you can kind of tell on camera, like some of our areas we dremeled in a little bit too deep, and there were some gaps here and there that would occur naturally that happened as well. So what we're gonna do is grab some quick seal and grab you a little bit of a cup of water and keep it next to you. So I'll do this one with you guys and show you what the process looks like. So you're gonna grab some of this, you're gonna lightly moisten the area that you're gonna use it on the EVA with, and then you're just going to fill that in. So be generous, just like you're piping a cake or something. And then grab like a scrap piece of foam, something, same thing, just kind of wet the edge a little bit and then put it up against your piece and slowly just smooth it in. Do that a couple of times and eventually it should just level itself out. And if you miss anything, you can add a little bit more to the area and then just reapply. Until you get it as smooth as it needs to be. Some parts might be a little bit more. Annoying than others, so you can go ahead and go in by hand. And once you have this done, you want to wet your fingers and you want to start kind of fading that out of itself. That way you don't get any further seam lines with your fix. Alright, do that. You notice I still have, if you can see it on camera, there's these two little areas that keep not filling. I've tried a couple of times to fill them. They don't, so I'm just gonna leave it alone, let this dry, and then just do a second pass, and that should fix everything up. But that's basically how you use this stuff. If we were to go up here, see the hole that we have here, just paste a little bit on there, use the foam to just kind of smooth it out and make it nice and even. Dip my finger into the water, just smooth that out all over and then fade it into the hat. Okay, try not to apply this with your finger. You will end up with like your fingerprint lines on it. So if you can find something smooth to do the application with, a scrap piece of foam works wonderfully for this process. So go ahead and give that a try. Fill in all of the gaps that need to be filled. Let that dry for about 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, and then reapply. And then once that's done, you can add another coat of plastic dip and we'll be ready for paint. So I'm gonna fast forward through those steps and catch you guys for the next one. Here is our hat and all of the places that we had a lot of dips. We've put our caulking to make sure that it is a nice smooth transition. Doesn't look it, it looks very messy, but it is very smooth to the touch and I don't feel any dips anymore in any of the areas. So I'm gonna do a final piece of, a final round of plastic dip and then we're gonna go straight to painting. All right, we're back from the paint booth. Our mushroom is plastic dip and all of our dips have been filled, so everything is nice and smooth. Now we're going to use some house paint from this. We have some stuff from Valspar, from Lowe's, different colors. Basically, we're going for this color scheme here. And so we're gonna go dark on top. We're gonna go very light, like fleshy at the bottom. We have like a lighter color for the little mushrooms and then like a teal color for the mushrooms on top. Our mushrooms are going to be 2mm pieces of foam stuck onto this. So we're not painting them on directly, but you can go whichever direction you'd like. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and fast forward through those steps and catch you guys for the next one. Okay, so I've already pre-cut a lot of my little mushroom shapes that are going to be the pattern that are going on the hat. So now I'm going to cut out the other little shapes. As you can see here, I've plasti dipped an entire sheet of 2mm EVA foam, and then I painted the color that my little bits are going to be right on top of that. So this used to be white, and now it is this color, and that's the color of the little spacer things that are going to be in between. So you can do this for yours as well if you're going to cut everything by hand or by scissors, whatever the case may be. I'm going to use my laser cutter. It's going to be a lot faster, but the process is the same for you. Just kind of paint an entire sheet, what those shapes are going to be. That'll make it a lot easier than painting them individually, and then just cut them out of that sheet. All right, let's fast forward through those steps and catch you guys for the next ones. Right, and now we have completely put all of our mushrooms even up to the edge on our piece. So this is a very complex way of doing it. You could just make a stencil, as you'll see here on the side, that you can use to kind of put over the foam and paint, or at least trace where all of this is going to be, to make sure that everything aligns properly. I had one hell of a time freestyling this, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. So regardless if you're painting them on or sticking them on, I would definitely recommend that. All right, so now we're going to move on to painting our mushrooms. As you can see, we have a very subtle, just kind of like toasted edge on these. Right, I'm gonna show you guys how to achieve that with the airbrush. Thank you. Okay, so I have my airbrush here, and I have the base color paint that I used for the hat diluted into kind of like a milky like consistency. And I'm going to use that to add just a little bit of toasted edge to the mushrooms. I'm going to go ahead and lock the camera here. And hopefully you guys can see this happen in real time. See, very subtle toasted marshmallow look. I'm gonna do a little bit of that under the bellows as well. Nothing too crazy, nothing too complex. You can go a little darker if you want, but remember, I'm lighting these up, so I don't want to take away from the translucency of the foam too much, okay? Which is why I'm going super subtle. But if you're just painting yours, you can go however intense you'd like. Another thing that I'm gonna do while I have this loaded up is I'm going to add a little bit of the paint on the edges of the billow to kind of like add a little bit of shadow to it and make it feel a bit more prominent. And you can see we have the inside edges nice and toasty and gives it a little bit more depth on the underside. All right, so with that all set, we're just gonna figure out where it is that we want to place our mushrooms. And so for me, I'm gonna have one here, one here. Embarrassingly, I'm putting them where my pattern didn't quite work out, just to kind of like hide that sin. So now that you guys know it, you can't unsee it, just like me. And this one, I'm going to try to place just kind of like over on the other side. They don't have to be perfectly spaced out from each other. They actually are placed very randomly. And if you actually do look at the in-game characters, their patterns don't line up either. So I don't feel too bad. So this is gonna be my general position. Okay, so I'm gonna take it out, just kind of make some type of mark. You can do this with a Sharpie of where you're gonna want your mushroom to kind of like be. So I have this one up here, so I'll make a mark there. This one right here. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put these holes in here right now as pilot holes. I'm going to drill my holes, run the lights, and I'll catch you guys for the next step. Okay, so the way that our lights ended up working out, we were able to get 5 lights per hole. Okay, so I have 5 lights protruding out of here, 5 lights protruding out of here, and then this last one had 6, okay, which is perfectly fine. Depending on what the distance of your holes are, you may be able to get more or less, or depending on which fairy lights you guys have, you may be able to get more or less. So an important thing to note that we're going to do here is make sure that the LEDs are offset from each other. So like you don't want them too close. So I'm gonna bundle them, but I'm gonna bundle them like separate from each other. So like that, like this, so. All right, gonna grab a mushroom. I'm gonna turn the light on so I can see what I'm doing. Okay. So we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights. I'm just gonna start stuffing those in, trying to move them around to make sure that they spread out as evenly as possible inside, so that we don't have too many hot spots. I can use the billow of the mushroom to kind of press them down towards the base or twist them around to make sure that they move, so on and so forth. All right, so I have one in position. We'll move on to the next one. So again, and once we have our lights organized the way that we want, we can just grab some super glue, glue these in place, and then we'll be done. All right, we have our mushrooms installed, looking kawaii AF. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to do is just grab a piece of sticky Velcro to put on the battery pack so that it doesn't shift around inside of it. Doesn't matter if it's the front, the side, the back of the hat. You just want to put it somewhere where it's away from your head. So I'm just gonna arbitrarily pick here, inside of here, right around here. Okay. Stick that in, and there we have it. We've completed our NPC fashionista Cece hat. Now, if you wanted to do a little bit more wire management, you can always like glue these down with some duct tape or something like that to get the things to sit a little better or nicer or cleaner, whatever the case may be. All right, this has been Cass and Brooke from GiveWave Studios, and hope you guys learned something. Hope this one was useful to you guys. If you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave them down in the comment section. Try to get back to those as often as possible. All right, guys, so I'll catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.